The following presentation is part of the Technology and the Corporation Conference Series, sponsored by MIT's Industrial Liaison program.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all to MIT. My name is Rafael Reif. I want to welcome our many distinguished guests from government and industry and academia. I want to start for their leadership on manufacturing issues at the national level. It's an honor for us to welcome Jason Miller and J.J. Rayner from the White House, Neil Oringer from the Department of Commerce, and David Danielson from the Department of Energy. From the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we are very grateful to have Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Greg Bielecki, with us and his team. They are pushing forward this work at the state level through the Massachusetts Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative. And I really want to use this moment again to express my deep gratitude and admiration for the leaders of the MIT SPY effort, Professor Suzanne Berger, Institute Professor Phil Sharp, PI Executive Director Oli Dueck, and the able assistance of our Associate Provost Mari Schmidt. I want to also extend our special thanks to the MIT faculty members who formed the PI Commission and to the generous sponsors who made this whole work possible. And I better do one more thing so that we can all get fed today and finish on time, and that's to the masterful staff work of Glenn Comiso. Thank you, Glenn. Let me begin by saying how delighted I am to participate in this discussion. It takes me back to an extremely exciting project that I played a role on as a young faculty member in electrical engineering. That was back in the 80s. And at the time, the overall manufacturing problem in the US was a little different from today, but still was important. The US at the time was not losing its manufacturing base per se, but we were getting killed or pretty beat on quality and productivity. And that was especially true in the domain of semiconductors. So a number of people from industry and academia started trying to figure out what we could do to make a difference. Was there anything we could do that would significantly improve the state of US semiconductor manufacturing sector? And I was lucky enough to work on this problem with others in the industry at the time, including Craig Barrett of Intel, who at the time was a vice president and already known as a rising star. That effort led to the creation of the Semiconductor Manufacturing Technology Consortium, which came to be known as SEMATECH. And as you all know, SEMATECH is still in existence today. But back then, it was a bold new effort that united government, industry, and universities. So as you will hear later, it'll be a key recommendation from the PI study to center on the unique effectiveness of this kind of public-private partnership. So I'm personally delighted to engage in this thinking again about the question of manufacturing and to see this idea actually come full circle. I want us to move quickly to the heart of today's discussion. And that's the findings of the MIT study called Production in the Innovation Economy, or as we all call it, PI. I've been asked to frame the conversation briefly, so I'll highlight a couple of points. The first one is on the nature. I want to comment on the nature of America's manufacturing issue. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the way that the PI researchers approached the issue and a little bit of how and what they found. At the end of this morning, I will talk briefly again about what we see as the next steps, the opportunities we see for MIT to make a contribution. In this room of experts, I will not spend much time defining the state of US manufacturing, but it can be useful to review just a few key facts. First, although it is not as strong as it used to be, US manufacturing is still alive and is still a critically important sector of our economy. We are the world's second largest manufacturing nation after China. In 2011, manufacturing accounted for $1.8 trillion or 12.2% of US GDP. And manufacturing provides 12 million direct production jobs. It also provides roughly 30 million additional manufacturing-related US jobs from suppliers to product distribution and service. On the other hand, the trends are not good. Manufacturing is shrinking as a percentage of US GDP. As I just said, in 2011, it represented about 12% of GDP, but that is down from 27% back in the late 50s. US manufacturing is falling as a percentage of global output, dropping from 26% in 1970 to below 19% in 2011. And manufacturing is shrinking as a source of US employment. For most of the period from 1965 to 2000, overall manufacturing employment generally remained constant at around 17 million. But from 2000 to 2010, the number of manufacturing jobs in the US crashed downward by about one-third, almost one-third, a loss of 5.7 million jobs. And these downward trends also hold true in high-tech fields. Only 10 years ago, the US enjoyed a trade surplus in advanced technology manufactured goods. This category now accounts for an annual trade deficit of $100 billion, almost one quarter of our US trade deficit for manufactured goods. So with trends like this, some might argue, of course, that US manufacturing is a lost cause, or that we should just give up chasing it and be satisfied with an overall shift towards services. Clearly, all of us in this room are convinced that manufacturing is essential to America's future. The reasons are, of course, to me, obvious. Partly this is because it will remain still an important source of good-paying jobs, both directly in production and in the services that flow from it. Partly because maintaining a strong, advanced manufacturing base is crucial to our national security. But above all, because if we want to stay strong in innovation, which is the signature US economic advantage, we must regain our strength in manufacturing. Today, you will hear compelling evidence in many fields that rapid innovation depends on close ties to production. And you will hear clear suggestions for how to build the innovation to production ecosystems the country needs. MIT began work on the PI study in 2010 under the leadership of my predecessor, then President Susan Hockfield. This is not the first time that MIT has studied manufacturing. In fact, and this is mostly for the people who are not from MIT, in 1861, we go back a little bit here, MIT itself was founded to help America succeed in its industrial expansion. Ever since, MIT faculty, staff, and students have been working on new aspects of the manufacturing challenge. Today, more than 100 faculty at MIT work on various aspects of manufacturing, from robotics to new methods for synthesizing advanced materials, to new production tools for nanoscale manufacturing, to advanced supply chain logistics. We offer graduate programs in manufacturing that attract students from around the world. And as many of you know from having joined us for meetings on campus, MIT leaders also played a lead role in the administration's Advanced Manufacturing Partnerships, or AMP. And our next speaker was actually our leading industry partner in that effort, Andrew Liveris of Dow Chemical. In recent decades, perhaps MIT's best-known contribution in manufacturing came in the late 1980s. At the time, US manufacturing faced painful pressure from Japan, which was rising on the strength of quality management. MIT's then president, Paul Gray, called on MIT faculty to examine the best way to revive US manufacturing. And the result was an extremely influential book called Made in America. Its findings helped policymakers and industry groups change their practices, and it helped U.S. manufacturing regain its footing for some time. In that same spirit, the final PI report is called Making in America, a slight variation to reflect that its focus is on getting the process right. The PI report is not just another report on the troubled state of U.S. manufacturing. The MIT PI study offers something quite different. Professor Berger will explain in detail what makes PI different in its emphasis and its methods. But in my view, the PI report is different because it shines a bright light on the path of successful innovations. It answers questions such as, what factors allow a firm to carry an idea all the way to the marketplace? What factors can get in the way? How are those factors different for firms of different sizes or in different countries? And above all, what can we do to increase the odds of success? I hope I've given you a taste of what to expect this morning, and I hope you feel the depth of our commitment to this issue at MIT. To revive the prospects for America's innovation future, we need to identify and focus on the most promising opportunities for efficient, effective action. Action that involves and depends not just on government, but on companies of every size, on universities and on community colleges, on industry groups and funders and more. Today's report identifies such targets for focused action, and I hope that we can use it to begin to act. Today we're lucky to have in all these efforts some dedicated partners and allies, and our next two speakers are powerful examples. We're very fortunate with us to have here today the Acting Deputy Secretary of Commerce and head of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Pat Gallagher. His agency's mission is right on point: to promote U.S. innovation and industrial competitiveness by advancing measurement science, standards, and technology. Pat is a longtime supporter of MIT, and he has gone out of his way to make manufacturing a priority in the Department of Commerce. This morning, he will speak about driving 21st century manufacturing policy through partnerships and collaboration. But first, we will hear from another great champion of advanced manufacturing, Andrew Liveris, President, CEO, and Chairman of Dow Chemical. Andrew has championed the idea that manufacturing is critical to the long-term health of a nation's economy. And he has made the case in an excellent book called Make It in America. We're very grateful for his enthusiastic partnership as co-chair of the AMP Steering Committee, and I'm delighted to introduce his talk called A Revolution by Design, Building an Advanced Manufacturing Economy. Please welcome Andrew Liveris.